Hello, Grade 7. How are you? Hope you're safe and well. Today in biology lesson, we will study about feeding ourselves. This is our lesson. We studied before about food chains and food webs. And we said every food chain should start with a producer. And we have, after producer, we have a consumer. So what is a producer? Producer is a plant or organism that can make his own food by photosynthesis. Or it's not important to be a plant. Sometimes it will be microorganism like microplankton in the marine life. And we said the consumer is an organism that cannot make its own food, so it should consume other foods. We studied also about prey, predators, we studied about carnivores, herbivores. So today our lesson is talking about how can we feed ourselves. So please grab your highlighter and follow me. If you find any highlighted line, please highlight it. So feeding ourselves, habitat destruction. We studied the word habitat and we said it's a place for the animal and plant to live. So how can people or how can the habitat be destroyed? So this small orangutan has a big problem. We studied also about orangutan. It's a type of monkeys that live on the top of the trees. And we said it has developed his arms to be long, his feet to look like hands to grab the branch of the tree, and all these called adaptation. So this kind of orangutan live in the forest. His forest home covered Borneo for thousands of years. Traditional farmers cultivated small patches for a year, then moved on. So the forest grew back, but modern farming removes the trees forever. People sell the wood and use the space to grow crops. More than half of the trees in Borneo have been cut down recently. So in Borneo, in these forests in Borneo, farmers before, they were cutting small areas of trees, but not like large areas, and they moved on to another area. So these forests grew back again. Then in modern life, farmers start to cut down trees in a vast areas, like that means very huge areas. So no more trees for these orangutan to live. He has, or it has, to move on to find another place to live and to feed itself. So if there's no forests or not enough trees, that means not enough food for them to eat. In this case, they have very big problems because the population is very big in compare with the number of the trees. This orangutan shares the remaining forest with rhinos, leopards, elephants, native people, and uncountable numbers of smaller animals. So it should have its own habitat, but now it starts to share other habitats with other animals, and this can make a lot of problems because there's no enough food for all these creatures, and including the people, the local people. When the plants at the beginning of each food chain are destroyed, there is nothing for animals to eat. If they cannot move away, they die. So this is a problem. So if people start to destroy plants, so plants are the main source of food. These are the producers for food. So if there is no enough food for all these animals, which are herbivores, that means they will break the food chain, the animals will start to die, and the food chain will be destroyed. So this is a problem can affect the food chain. So okay, what about the pollution? Pollution is one of the other reasons, or sometimes the main reason even in our life, that can destroy habitats and can kill very large number of animals, and also in this case can affect humans. So let's see pollution. To grow more food on less land, some farmers use chemicals. These chemicals called fertilizers. So we all know if the farmers, if they want to grow the food more faster, vegetables or crops, they want it to grow more faster, they need to add something to the soil. This something is called fertilizer. These are chemicals to make the soil rich of vitamins and minerals, so this can affect the plant and make it grow faster. Increase plant growth by supplying minerals. This is the definition of the fertilizer, so please highlight it here. Fertilizers increase plant growth by supplying minerals, so adding more minerals to the plant. This is the meaning of the fertilizers, or these called fertilizers. Herbicides. What about the herbicides? Fertilizers are chemicals. What about the herbicides? Herbicides come from the word herb. Herb is like grass, okay? Herbs. So what about the side? Side means something to kill, okay? Something to kill or to destroy. So herbicides are chemicals used to stop the growth of the weeds, which is the bad grass, okay, that can absorb all the minerals from the soil. So sometimes we need to take it away and sometimes we need to destroy it. So farmers are adding these herbicides to stop weeds growing. So if I asked you what is a herb, what's the function of the herbicides, you will say stop weeds growing. And insecticides stop insect eating the plant. So insect, it's obvious, that comes from insect, and sides, that means something to kill or to destroy. So insecticides stop insects eating the plants. So here is the question. What is the meaning of herbicides or insecticides and sometimes fertilizers? So here's the answer. Fertilizers increase plant growth by supplying minerals. Herbicides stop weeds growing, and insecticides stop insects eating the plants. If these chemicals are not used correctly, they cause pollution. So how the pollution can affect these animals or these plants, sorry. If people added, or farmers added too much fertilizers, too much herbicides, let's take fertilizers now. If they gave the plants more minerals, too much minerals, this can kill or can poison the plant. It's like giving someone too much medicines, okay? It's a good medicine for a headache, but if you give him the whole pack, you can kill him, okay? So this is like adding too much medicines, chemicals. What about the herbicides? Herbicides can affect the bad weeds, but it can also transfer to the good crops that we want. So in this case, can destroy the crops. Also the insecticides. Sometimes if we want to kill an insect, we cannot spray these insecticides on the plants because plants can absorb them. Even the soil can absorb them. So if we added too much insecticides to the soil, this can be absorbed by the roots of the plants, and this can affect them too much. So this is pollution. You can pollute the soil. Pollution damages plants and animals. If animals ate these poisoned plants with herbicides or fertilizers or insecticides, they can be poisoned and they can be dead. When too much fertilizers runs into rivers, fish die. Insecticides kill useful insects like bees, and herbicides destroy wild plants. So sometimes we need these wild plants to produce more flowers, in this case to produce more plants to be like a food for the bees and the other insects. So if farmers start to add too much insecticides, this can kill the bees, and we need bees for pollination. And if these chemicals runs into the rivers, this can affect even the fish and can make them die, can kill them. Also, it can destroy the other plants that we want. When any plant or animal disappears, more than one food chain may be disrupted. So as I told you, if more animals died in the middle of the food chain, or plants in the beginning of the food chain, this can break the food chain, can destroy it, can disrupt it, because some animals rely only on one kind of plants to eat. Also, sometimes other animals, even animals, rely on another animals to eat only. They don't eat, for example, they don't eat elephants and giraffes. No, they eat specific kind of animals. If these animals died, they will be, they can die too. Okay, what about the invasive plants and animals? Who are these invasive, and what's the meaning of invasive? Invasive plants and animals, these kind of creatures, they can attack and destroy crops. So in the 1970s, insects called large grain borers were accidentally brought to Tanzania from Central America. So this is the large grain borers. This insect, you can see the body of an insect, and this insect, this is the leg of the insect, and the head here inside, because it's eating the maize, you know, the maize, the popcorn one. This is the maize. Okay, so in 1970s, this kind of insect is brought to Africa, south of Africa, to Tanzania specifically, from America. So in America, they do have predators, but not in Tanzania. So their favorite foods are maize and cassava. We all know, maybe you don't know cassava. Cassava is kind of crops, looks like the potato, the sweet potato. It can grow in Africa, mostly in Ghana, Nigeria. They do have this kind, and it's very useful, very rich of vitamin A. So this is their favorite food. In their old home, they had predators. That means in Central of America. But in Tanzania, no animals ate them. So they start to reproduce more and more, and no one is killing them, no one is eating them. So they start to reproduce, and they start to eat most of the crops. Their population exploded. Now they have spread to other African countries, and they destroy vast quantities of our food. Invasive plants and animals are damaging food chain all over the world. So these kind of invasive animals, they can destroy large quantities of food. So because they can, if they don't have predator to eat them, they can grow fast and they can destroy the whole crops. Now let's go to the next page, please. So we talked about how can the pollution and cutting or deforestation can destroy plants or destroy many habitats. How can we plan, or how scientists planned for the future? The human population is still growing. There will be many more people to feed in the future. all our food relies on plants' biomass. We cannot use more biomass than plants can produce. We studied about the biomass. It's the mass of the living things. So all our food relies on the plant's biomass. If there is enough biomass to feed all these numbers of animals and also humans, this can be good. But what about if there is not enough food for humans and for animals? We cannot just eat meat all the time. We need vegetables, we need fruits, we need crops, we need herbs. Also animals, we have herbivores. They only rely on the plants. So all our food relies on this biomass. So if we cannot grow more crops in future, because this population is rising all the time, the population of human and animals, if we cannot grow more biomass, this can cause a really big problem. So how the scientists plan for this? Scientists estimate that humans already use more than a quarter of the total produced on land. Every other animal has to share what's left. If we could grow crop plants faster, there would be more to go around. So here the scientists, they estimated that the humans ate like quarter of these producers, or what produced on our lands. And now each animal has to share, doesn't have its own food. They have to share. If we cannot grow more crops on land, this can be a problem. How can we grow more producers? How can we grow more plants? The producers in food chain don't need to be plants. And as we said earlier, they can be microorganisms like microplanktons in the marine, or they like the algae. Thanks to algae, can absorb much more sunlight. Tanks of algae can absorb much more sunlight than plants. So they grow much faster. We could use microorganisms to make fuels and animal feeds. So we have more land left to grow food. Here, these large quantities of algae, they can absorb more sunlight, so they can photosynthesize more and more. In this case, microorganisms, we can use these microorganisms to ferment these algae and produce fuels. In grade 8, you will study more about how can we in grade 9, you will study more about how can we produce fuels, how can we make these fuels. So these fuels can be made by microorganisms and algae also. So in this case, we can feed more animals, and we can have more land to grow food, other than cutting the trees just to grow. Half of the world's population lives in cities, and the number is rising. If we built tall greenhouses in city centers, we could grow more food on less land. Plants grow faster indoors because they aren't damaged by bad weather or pests. We can also give them extra light and carbon dioxide to help them grow faster. So these are the greenhouse, but it's tall, not like on the ground. We are using the traditional greenhouse on land. These can take a very big area. So we can use these tall greenhouse in the center of the cities, or here like in the sea. They can produce more plants. We can give them fertilizers. We can give them sunlight, more sunlight. They can absorb more sunlight. we can give them more carbon dioxide just to make them grow, the plants inside them grow faster and faster. So here we have a question said, plants can grow faster indoors, and the answer is here, because they aren't damaged by bad weather or pests. We can also give them extra light and carbon dioxide to help them grow faster. Okay, after all this, after the estimating, after the planning, how can we avoid pollution? How can we avoid it? Modern farms cover vast areas with one crop. They use huge amounts of fertilizers to replace the minerals crops take from the soil. Crops attract huge population of insects. Farmers need to use insecticides to destroy them. They may be able to cut their use of chemicals by changing the way they farm. So here, in this modern life or modern farms, they are growing more crops in like very large quantities, and they are using too much fertilizers just to give them more minerals, to provide more minerals for these plants. Here the plants can attract more insects. So how can they stop using insecticides? Because we said insecticides can pollute the soil, and this case can kill the plants or can kill the animals too. So how can they avoid avoid using them? They can change their way of farming. They just need to change the way. So how can they change the way? They have an example here about the rice. The rice here. Rice grows in flooded fields. We all know that we can only grow rice inside the water itself. So these called flooded fields, like full of water. If fish are added to the water, the rice and fish help each other out. So how does this happen, or how can this happen? How can the fish help the rice and the rice help the fish? Here, they both grow well without chemicals. So if we didn't add any chemicals, they can grow well. So how can we make them use each other to help each other out to live? The fish eat insects that would damage the rice, and their waste products provide the minerals rice needs. So we can add here fish. We can put the fish inside the water that the flooded fields for the rice. Here the fish can eat the insects that can destroy the rice. And also, when they have waste products, their waste products full of minerals, so they can return these minerals into the soil inside, because they are living inside the water, so they can return these minerals to the water. In return, what can the rice how can the rice help the fish? Here, the rice keep the water clean and cool for the fish, because it can take minerals. So it can take minerals and clear this water, so it will be healthy for the fish to live in. So this is how can they help each other for to live, and this is how can farmers change their way. This is one example of how farmers can change their way of farming. Now let's see the summary of the lesson. Humans destroy habitats when they clear land to grow crops. If farm chemicals aren't used properly, they damage natural food chains. So humans, they can destroy these habitats by cutting these trees or plants. This can affect the animals, and this can affect the food chain also. Also, if they've added more fertilizers, more insecticides, they can poison the plant. In this case, they can sometimes kill animals. Invasive plants and animals can destroy existing food chains like the large grain borers. If we can reduce damage to other food chains by producing more food in less space and reducing our use of chemicals. This was all about feeding ourselves. Don't forget the yellow box, homework, and if you have any question, please write it down and I will check it later. Stay safe and see you soon. Bye bye.